In this lesson, we'll focus on enlarging and manipulating the shape of the ears. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's go ahead and take a moment and just have a look at the progress we've made thus far. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the visibility of our current manipulated state of our head here. And here we can see our original base head that we started out with. So what a difference we've made over just the past few lessons in really pushing this form to look a lot less human. And now we're starting to really get that look that we're going for, which is a lot more goblin or orc-like in appearance. So we're going to continue on by manipulating some additional features, which will be the ears. So with that said, let's actually have a look at our sketch that we worked up in Lesson 2. And so in Lesson 2, we talked about enlarging the ears and making them pointy. And so that's kind of a defining feature that I think of whenever I'm imagining an orc or a goblin-like character or creature. And so you'll also notice that I kind of curved up the tips of the ears where they're pointed just to kind of give him a more devil-like appearance. Again, we're going for something that feels very aggressive and just nasty in appearance. And so working in his ears and making them larger and pointed is really going to help flesh out this overall look that we're going for. So let's go ahead and start working on the ears. You'll notice that we have a group that I've created titled Ears, and we're starting again with a merged head. So let's go ahead and grab our lasso tool, making sure we're on our merged head layer. And we're going to start with the left ear, or the screen right ear, if you will. And I'm just drawing a selection around the ear, okay? All right, so now that we've made our selection, I'm just going to right-click within the selection and go to Layer via Cut. So what this does is it basically separates the ear onto its own layer, as you can see. Let's go ahead and call this left ear, all right? So we want to do the same thing with the opposite ear. However, I'm noticing that we're missing more of the ear now that we've just made some changes to the overall head. We kind of increased the brow, we've made some changes to the jaw and so forth. So as a result of a lot of these changes we've made, we're missing more of that information of that ear. This is where we can go back to an earlier step in our process and grab that information that we still have saved on another layer. So let's go ahead and hide the visibility of our ears group just for the time being. We'll jump down to our original base head. And as you can see, more of that ear, that right ear, is visible to us. So I'm going to make a selection using my lasso tool once again around this ear. Right-click within the selection, and this time I'm going to do Layer via Copy because I still want to keep that ear on our base head. So we'll go ahead and drag our new layer below our merged head layer in our ear group. All right, excellent. Okay, going back to our ears group. What I'd like to do first is let's turn off the visibility of that new layer, and I'm going to move to my merged head layer here. Let's just grab our eraser tool. Let's erase away this ear that we have right now, just so it doesn't get in the way. We no longer need it. And so the reason that I'm going to have our right ear layer be beneath our merged head layer in our layers panel in our ears group is because as I manipulate it and enlarge it, I don't want it to cover up any of this information. I don't want it to overlap the brow that we have worked on and developed. So we want it to be behind the head as we move it around. Okay? And so there it is right there, and we can see we just have more information to work with there. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back over to the left ear. First, let's go ahead and name this layer right ear, though. All right, just keeping everything organized. So on our left ear layer, let's go ahead and start by free transforming it, hitting Control-T on our keyboard. Now I'm just holding down Shift and increasing the overall size, trying to temporarily maintain the overall dimensions of the ear. And I'm just kind of moving it around, kind of repositioning it. And we could go just a little bit larger, but I think that'll work just nicely. Okay, excellent. So now what we want to do is go to our right ear, and let's just do the same thing. Free transform, and we'll resize it as well. So now he's got some very large kind of monkey ears. And all we need to do now is go into Liquify and let's manipulate him a little bit. Let's make him pointy. So I'm just kind of repositioning this. And I think that looks about right. Excellent. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go back to our left ear. Let's jump into Liquify. So coming back up to Filter, Liquify, and there we have our ear that we're going to be focusing on. So we want to use our forward warp tool once again. And we've got our brush size up pretty large, which I think will work nicely. And then we'll bring our brush density down just a little. I still want it pretty high too. I basically want to pull this upper part of the ear just outward, like so. Okay? And then we'll kind of push it in a little bit as well. Now let's go ahead and reduce the size of our brush. So I'm just kind of reducing it, hovering over it, just to kind of see how large or small we want to go with it. And now we can start to kind of pinch the top part of that ear and just bring it to a point. And so we can already see what a huge change we're making just with a few pulls of the ear. Just kind of pulling some of these pixels around, pushing them around. May want to lower my brush size a little bit more. And let's go ahead and bring our brush density down, kind of concentrating most of that brush towards the center of that cross point. And I'm liking how that's looking. That's looking really cool. So at this point, it's just a matter of kind of playing around with these options over here and just kind of seeing what they can do for you as we manipulate this overall ear. But overall, I'm liking how it's looking. We may want to go large one more time and just kind of pull the ear out even more. And we'll kind of bring this part down just slightly. Okay, I like how that's looking. Let's go ahead and commit to these changes. We'll click OK. All right, very cool. That's looking really wicked. Let's do the same thing to the opposite ear. So before we go into Liquify, we actually want to make sure we're on our right ear layer. Okay, so now we'll go into Liquify. All right, so there we have our right ear, and we'll just basically do the same thing. We just kind of want to pull that ear outward like so. And I usually start kind of with the tip of the ear, pulling it out. And now we can reduce our brush size, bring down our brush density about halfway. And just kind of start to tweak the tip of it, make it just a little bit more pointy. Kind of pulling out that outer part of the ear a little bit more. All right, very nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit to those changes as well. And of course, we've got a few little imperfections in here that we can always come in and start to clone out. We can still kind of clean up some of these little edges if we want as well. So what we can do now is let's make a new layer. Okay, and on this layer, we'll grab our healing brush tool once again. Now, if I haven't mentioned this before, since we're going to be now cloning across layers, we want to basically bring in some cloned information, not only from the sides of the head, but also bring in some texture as well. Since we're moving from one layer to another, you may want to come up here to your control panel, and you can see where it says all layers. You have some different options here where you can basically have it focused where it only works on the current layer and below, or across all layers. And so that's how we can use our healing brush tool to clone from one layer to another. All right, so I'm basically going to kind of come over here to this ear over here, the right ear. Let's go ahead and make sure we're on that layer first. We may want to kind of bring it over just slightly, just see how that looks. That kind of saves us a little bit of trouble having to fill in that information, and the ear still looks very nice. All right. Now I'm just kind of looking at this overall. Let's go ahead and look at our left ear. And we may actually want to grab our eraser tool first, kind of shave off part of that ear just slightly before going back to our healing brush tool. And so on our new layer, let's go ahead using our healing brush tool, sample from the chin, and just kind of bring in a little bit of that texture. This is very similar to what we did with the tongue. There are just some nice little bumps right here on the chin that I really like, that I kind of want to bring some of that into the ear. And we can play around with the opacity of that layer eventually if that's looking a little bit intense. But right now I'm just kind of blocking in just a little bit of texture, just to make it look a little bit more visually interesting. All right, cool. And now we can kind of lower the opacity a little bit too, if that's looking just a little bit intense. And again, we can kind of continue on, just kind of moving some of that texture around, just making his earlobe just look a little bit more interesting. It felt kind of flat, honestly. And that's in part because, we have kind of stretched a few things around, kind of moved the ear and reshaped it significantly. So just bringing a little bit of texture into the ear, I think helps a lot. And we'll kind of come up to this area as well. Again, just kind of bringing in a little bit of these skin pores really makes the ear look very interesting. All right, so that's looking really nice, and we can also kind of finish out focusing on kind of the top part of this ear as well, bringing in just a little bit of that texture. So again, one of the great things about the healing brush tool, as I've mentioned in an earlier lesson, is that it matches the overall lighting and contrast, the texture. It's a really handy little tool to just basically paint with. So we can really continue on kind of refining these little skin pores that we're adding in. We may add some over here to the right ear as well. And so we can kind of continue on focusing on that, fine-tuning it in between lessons. So in the next lesson, we're going to start a process of really adding details, more details, now that we've pretty well manipulated a lot of the form of the head, just different attributes of the head where we've really changed up the form in various ways. So in the next lesson, we're going to kind of focus on adding just some added wrinkles or recesses, namely right here above the upper lip. We're going to kind of give him a little bit of a lip recess. And if you remember from our concept sketch, we kind of work that in there as well. So that's just going to really add to his overall appearance and character. So stick around and we'll see you in the next lesson.